Hi, everybody. I think we are live. Let's double check the stream on this side. And just wanted to thank everybody from the Higher Ed Social Facebook group for joining us for today's webinar. I am super excited about what we have for you today. We have a couple of great guys that I actually met at the EDU Digital Summit in Denver this past year to talk to you about some of the great work that they're doing. We've got two speakers today, Jeremiah Barba. He's a digital marketing manager at Up&Up. And we also have Seth Bridges. He is the founder of Rival IQ out of Seattle. And today they're going to talk about their white paper that they put out and basically how to increase campus engagement. They went through hundreds of examples and universities and kind of went through and learning some best practices. And so they've got a really amazing setup for you guys today. And I'm super excited for them to share their expertise with you. These guys are amazing. For those of you on the live stream watching on YouTube, there's a chat box over here on the right. So if you have questions, please feel free to post them up. I know it looks like we've got a bunch of people watching. Can you guys go ahead and type into chat? Let us know you're here and that your chat function works okay. Just go ahead and post up here on the right. We'll be curating questions kind of throughout, and then at the end answer any questions that you guys have for Seth and Jeremiah here. And without further ado, I'm going to switch it back over to them to kick this off.
All right, beautiful. I'm going to hit share here. Give me just a second, and I'm going to pop right over here into Keynote. All right, so I'm going to also make sure that I get that mouse off there. So thank you for joining us. We are excited just about talking about Higher Ed Social. Everything good here? You guys see my screen? Just to make sure.
For sure.
All right.
Looks great on our
Beautiful.
side.
All right, so let's jump in. So we're going to talk about winning higher ed social media engagement today. And let's just hop right in and take a little tour, a little preview. Now, I want you to think about your average higher ed conference room, Monday morning meetings, all kinds of things being talked about. Now, let me see if some of these statements ring a bell, if they sound familiar at all. So we need more engagement. You know, how can we get more shares? You know, what's going on? Why aren't our posts getting likes? You know, what's happening here? And then my all-time favorite, let's all prepare for a just mass cringe here, this fantastic phrase, how can we make our posts go viral? Word of advice, if anyone ever says that to you, just stop, drop, and roll. Out of the room, no one will even know. Just make your way right out. And I have to add my favorite emoji. That's how that last phrase makes me feel, expressionless. That's really all I can say. So we're going to jump right in and look at a couple posts as an example. Now, this was a little bit of a mystery that my coworker Matt and I were looking at. This was around kind of first day of classes at a big major university. You can see a bell tower, which a lot of universities have. I don't know if that one's a recognizable one or not, but these are major universities, ones that you would recognize. And there was this post. This is one of the photos they put up. And it's a nice image. It looks really beautiful. And we thought it was a great post. And then this was another image from another university that was similar, also a first day of school post. So we felt like, okay, two first day of school posts. These are both nice. And let's look at these two together. We were working with this client right here for this image. We were working with them on social media and helping them to boost some engagement. And we looked at these two posts. Now here they are again. Here is this bottom right one that we had looked at. Now, you can see it got about 745 likes, 40 plus shares, 18 comments. Now, their page that this was posted on had over 400,000 likes. So you would think it would just explode in engagement, but not really. This top left page, this top left post here, over 7,000 likes. You can see that, 600 plus shares, tons of comments. And you can see here the page likes that they had were fewer, 260,000 plus, not as many as this lower right post. We were trying to figure out what was going on. Was it time of day that it went up? Now this top left post that did so well went up kind of first thing in the morning. We thought, wow, that's really nice. It looks really good. They got in that quick. Is it because a lot of people are tuned in at that point? Is it because it's a single image versus multiple? This bottom right was part of a gallery that they had put up, so we felt like what had happened. So we had contacts at both these schools. We were working with one, and we had met someone from this other school, particularly this one on the top left that had done so well, and we found out that this was pretty much the answer. They had promoted this post and they had boosted it. They had thrown money at it, like this fantastic gift that I love. They had just thrown money at it. So wouldn't that be awesome if you could just magically throw money at your post and engagement would just go through the roof? Unfortunately, you know, that's not the case, but the nice thing is there are lots of small changes and little things that you can do to boost higher ed engagement on social. And it's awesome to see that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of small things that you can do. So we're going to walk through some of them with you today. So let's go over the agenda real quick. In a second, Seth is going to take over and we're going to talk about the methodology, nice big nerd alert word, behind this white paper that we put out. We're not going to focus in on the white paper today. We're just going to bring out some of those concepts and things that we pointed out. We'll give you a link later to download it so you can see it. But he's going to talk about the methodology, you know, what we mean, what is engagement, how many schools we looked at, etc. Then Seth's going to go on and talk about the fact that you have a big opportunity for engagement in higher ed because of some stats that are happening there. You've got an open door, which is pretty awesome. Then he's going to go on to a section about back to school. Now, it's sort of a timely thing, but that doesn't have to just apply to back to school. You'll see that there are lots of events that come around in your school year, and there's cool things you can do with those events. So don't get stuck on back to school, but it's going to apply to a lot of different areas. Then I'm going to take over and I'm going to talk about some small changes you can make to get big improvements, and I'm going to use a client of ours, University of Kentucky, as an example. Then I'm going to talk about humor and authenticity. It's about just making them laugh, being authentic, being a human, and how that can really help. And then the last section is about small schools, but big engagement. You might see some of these examples or think of course, Kentucky, of course, Indiana, of course, all these schools have got big engagement. Not necessarily just a big school thing. You can definitely get good engagement without being big. There's just a lot of things you can put in place. So I'm going to head on to methodology and hand it over to Seth.
Great, thanks, Jeremiah. And yeah, nerd alert, it is true. I have more than 10 years being a student in higher education. So that's a lot of experience. Sadly, most of it was before, it was the pre-social media era. I know I look kind of young, and I am, but social media is that new. So we're all still kind of learning and doing, but I'm a big dork. I do have a PhD in computer science, and that doesn't mean trust me, but at least I've been there. So Jeremiah and I got together to do this higher ed study, and we really wanted to understand what kinds of activities, what kind of correlations did we see from and in universities that have really high levels of engagement. And that could have been on a single social channel like Twitter or Facebook, but also in aggregate across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, YouTube. Go across the board and see where are these universities seeing results and what are some of the kinds of activities that we're seeing from them that might be driving those. So we pulled together every single social media post audience growth data from 340 schools. And that was 600,000 social posts across all those social channels. And we used that data to go and rank some of the best performers across each of these social media channels, again, as well as an aggregate. And we found lots of interesting things, but particularly, Jeremiah, could you hit the next slide for me? The number one thing that jumped out at us was the engagement rates. So this is the percentage of followers from any one university that engaged with every post, or on average with every post. And the number one thing for me, so I look at this kind of data across all kinds of industries, and the number one thing that jumped out was higher ed on average had a 4.1% engagement rate per post on Instagram. And that's meaningful if you understand that brands, personalities, kind of non just regular everyday people on Instagram, the average engagement rates we see are 1% and actually declining. Whereas in higher ed, all of you have such an opportunity because your networks are so engaged. 4%, 4x on Instagram. The same thing held true in Twitter, not quite 4x, maybe 2x, and on Facebook, again, 2 to 2.5x, the average brand page engagement. And why? Well, it turns out that your communities are connected to you forever, right? You have people that live in the local area. You have former students, you have staff, you have faculty, you have postdocs, you have athletic support. There are so many reasons that people are connected at a much deeper level than they are with many other things in their lives. I'm a University of Pittsburgh graduate. I don't live in Pittsburgh anymore. I live in Seattle. But this is sad for me to say, but I'm a Husky. I got my PhD from UW. I kind of don't care about Husky football, despite the fact that they're doing really well right now. I'm a Pitt Panther, will be for my whole life. My money will go there, my support goes there, my thoughts go there. It's just what it is. Take advantage of this fact. That is the number one takeaway I always have. People are going to engage. You have to give them a reason. So, Jeremiah, let's hit the next slide. Let's stop talking about numbers, because we'll point you to the study after this, and you can go have a look. But let's talk about some specifics. And one thing that jumped out to me doing some analysis to bring some fresh content to you all today was, right now-ish, back to school is happening. And okay, fine, you think about doing back to school posts, but the thing that really popped when I went through the data was class of 2020. So you're looking at freshman convocation, you're looking at people coming back to school, but you're particularly looking to welcome this new set of students that will graduate in the class of 2020. And so Jeremiah, if you could hit the next slide for me, I'll just show a couple examples. Again, I'm a Pitt grad, so I'm going to use Pitt here, the Cathedral of Learning, but they say class of 2020, meet the cathedral, and they, little post about the cathedral, hashtag including 2020. Cool. The comments on this, the shares on, look at this thing. It's, I'm squinting in there, a couple hundred shares on a post that's a picture of the Cathedral of Learning. You should read the comments. The comments are all very funny. They're all former students who are like, oh, yep, I remember coming home from parties, couldn't find my way, saw the cathedral. That's how I got back to Oakland. Like, great. It was a reason for people to engage, and the campaign was all about the class of 2020. I looked across this whole set of schools. Only about 2/3 of the schools, which is a good number, but 2/3 of the schools did a post about freshman convocation or 2020, class of 2020. That means there's a full third of you out there who did not take advantage of this opportunity to welcome these new students. Some schools, like Miami University, Miami of Ohio, they did like 27 posts about freshman convocation. They were getting people involved from alumni. Specifically, you could see campaigns focused on alumni, campaigns focused on current students, campaigns focused particularly toward those new students at move-in day parents. They went all at it, and you can see that it drove some really good results from them. Jeremiah, could you have the next slide? Another thing that we noticed was less about class of 2020, but also just welcoming all students back into those, some humor brought in here by the Naval Academy, making your picking your clothes for the first day of school really easy since 1845. Like, great, we all wear uniforms, like little tongue in cheek, great post. Jeremiah, the next slide, please. Again, 2/3 of the schools did some posts that had to do with either class of 2020 or back to school. And these posts on average saw double the engagement that we see from the already fantastic engagement on average from all these schools, 2x on Twitter and Facebook, and also a 15% lift on Instagram across all these posts. So these kinds of events that bring community together and give everyone a reason to jump in and share a memory, share some experience, these are ways that you are going to drive increased virality, increased sharing, and more conversation on your social media. So that's
all right.
There's phase one. Back to you, Jeremiah.
Beautiful. All right, cool. So I'm going to hop into this, kind of come back to the point that we were talking about, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to start over completely and take everything from square one for your social, because there really are a lot of things that for a lot of us sometimes we overlook, we don't see because we're kind of in the forest, right? We don't see the trees. I'm just going to talk about a few things with a client of ours at the UK. So we had done a presentation at Case 3 about social media, and the UK director of marketing said, hey, come by, look at our social channels, let's do a workshop. So that's the beginning of when we found Rival IQ and started using that tool, which was really useful and helpful, and we used that to help them along the way. So we looked at a competitive landscape of 8 schools for UK, and they had the second largest following, but they were almost dead last in engagement. So you would think Kentucky, particularly a brand as strong as Kentucky, would have great engagement, but that wasn't the case. We were trying to figure out why, And we looked at, you can see here the date stamps. This was in April. And we looked at it and said, you know, this is your Twitter feed. Boy, like I feel like I'm in an owl sanctuary, because there's just owlies everywhere. There's a lot of hidden content. There are no pictures. Here's the Motivation Monday, but there's no image. I'm having a hard time here. I'm not really connecting with this Twitter feed, right? Some people are still engaging, but wow, we could make some small changes and really do a lot better. Stuff like this. Great Star Wars reference. Use the image, Luke. Experienced the fantastical at this art museum. Okay, and I went to this link. I remember looking at this and saying, okay, this looks like an interesting event, but you've got an image like this hidden in the article that you could have pulled out, and wow, that's an eye catcher right there. You could have just used that. So low-hanging fruit, my favorite cliche, that's right there that you can make small changes to really get to big improvements. These are some of the other things that we talked about. So more images and videos to post. Let's just make it more engaging to scroll down that feed. Don't hide the content. Don't hide things behind Owly. And you're going to have to get out of Hootsuite sometime and post manually and get the videos out there. More engagement with students. Let's interact. Let's pay attention to who's mentioning you. Now, they had a similar issue that some of you might be having, and that you might not be a full-time social media manager. That's okay. You might not be a full-time community specialist, manager, paying attention to the social. Just keeping an eye on it and engaging when you're mentioned will really help. Just try to use some more humor, authenticity, and we worked with them to really build a framework where their staff would be comfortable. The irony of that is funny, right? That you build a framework for being funny or kind of looking outside your normal kind of comfort zone, throwing gifts on there and interacting with people in fun ways, and it gives you that freedom, because then you can go back and say, oh, we said this is the tone that we're going to have, so we're going to stick with it, we're going to have fun with it. Just a reminder that the content that is on your social networks is for your audience. It's not for you. It's not a faculty staff news feed. It's not all about your awards and how great you are. If anything, you've seen those kind of posts backfire. So there's nothing wrong with sharing the good things that your company, your university is doing. That's fine. But remember, the majority of content is for them. And then take advantage of real world or internet events. May the 4th be with you, and the kind of stuff that happens that just comes out of nowhere and starts trending, like the dress last year, all that kind of stuff. Jump on there and take advantage of those events, and you'll be able to be really timely. So then we got things like this. I wish you could see this video. Go check out the UK Twitter feed, because they've done some fantastic videos recently. Really solid videos, very engaging, lots of images. Their feed is much more engaging now. This is a GIF you can't see, but taking advantage of not only athletics, but a really cool GIF that they made. The difference was awesome, really, just to see. And through Rival IQ, we're getting emails that are saying, hey, University of Kentucky engagement is up on Twitter 200%. We're like, all right, that's what we're talking about. Things are coming along. So after about 3 months, we went back and did a review, and here's some of the numbers. So they had a 344% improvement in engagement rate per post. They went from about 40-ish engagements per post, average up to almost 180. And then we're looking at some of their competitors, which happen to be A&M, and Indiana, and seeing sort of their growth rates and seeing where they landed in that landscape. And that was pretty exciting, and they're still growing. We were just back there. My coworker was just back there spending some time with them and seeing how things are growing, and they're making some tweaks. They had to do a lot of legwork kind of to put some of those strategies together, but there's also really small things that you can do to improve, which is awesome. So that's exciting. You don't have to make huge changes to see big results. So I'm going to pass it back to Seth for this section.
Great. So another thing, as I was perusing all of the data from the last couple of months from this set of universities, that jumped out at me was that another class of post that absolutely had outsized engagement compared to the average content were posts that celebrated community. You think of universities as such rich places where every kind of research, activity, cultural engagement can happen and is happening. And your job as someone who works in digital marketing, and particularly in social media, is bringing that connectedness to your digital channels and sharing your good news, sharing the good news of your community with the entire world. And so, can you give me the next slide here, Jeremiah? The couple examples that I found that, really just jumped out at me were generally in the class of students doing big things, but of course, faculty do big things and win all kinds of awards as well. And certainly you have opportunity in the mass of humanity that is doing good work and with and on behalf of your university. So here's the Miss America, a recent post from University of Arkansas. One of their students is now Miss America, and like they're very excited about that. They did quite a number of posts. This post had a 20+% engagement rate and thousands and thousands of likes, ton of comments, and it's good to know why. People are proud of their university, they're proud of their fellow classmate, and again, they're taking good advantage of the fact that they have strong network to amplify their message. Can you give me the next one here? So a lot of students, it turns out, at universities go to the Olympics. Like young people who are athletic go to college and compete. Imagine that. Here's an example from the University of Akron. One of their student athletes was in Rio and came back, and you can see he's flashing his Z Zap for the University of Akron. Again, this post also blown up from an engagement and amplification perspective, sharing the good things. And it doesn't have to be the Olympics, it doesn't have to be Miss America. Here is a post from Texas A&M where they're celebrating female leadership of one of their student groups, an all-female committee leading one of their major student groups. This post had 16,000 shares. So whenever you're looking at did they get that from boosting or not? Posts that have 16,000 shares, they're not typically boosted. That is true viral content. That is the community celebrating, frankly, something really fantastic happening at the university. And these kinds of things are happening at your school. This is your content. This is what you should be sharing if you are trying to get your message out, if you are trying to create a tighter community that's both in real life as well as online. Jeremiah?
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. That's fantastic. So we're going to jump into now a section just about humor and authenticity. I know that it can be a little bit risky. It can be a little bit scary. So let's jump in and talk about what are some guidelines, which is a really dry word for a really great topic. What are some ways that you can think about enabling yourself to be authentic and have a good time? So why is it that sometimes we don't have personality? I think because, like this GIF, you might be just rolling along and then boom, it's over. You're afraid that you might end up on a listicle of 10 colleges that try to be funny and failed. You might end up in the middle of a PR nightmare. You might have done something inadvertently that you didn't even intend to be offensive, and next thing you know, you're on the front page. That's why a lot of times we don't want to do these kind of things, because it's just scary, right? So the deal here, as Will Ferrell will tell you here, strategery, humor is not a strategy. You don't say, what's our marketing strategy or social media? Humor. No, it's part of your larger content strategy. So why should you do it? I think the obvious one is that it works. You remember stories, you remember funny stories, you remember funny interactions. That's going to stick into the mind of the people that are paying attention. And it's a great way to engage. You've got college students, obviously. You've got high school students that you want to come. Show some of your personality, and it really shows your school's personality, because in a field where so many schools are so similar, you really want to show them who you are and why you think they're going to fit in. So that's part of some of the reasons behind why you should do it. This is a client of ours, Evangel, one of our favorite tweets of all time. Now, they are an evangelical university or Christian school. If they can get away with Netflix but no chill, so can you. You can totally do this. They have a great Twitter feed where they're very authentic and they interact with students a lot. They'll throw out tweets to other schools, and it can really be a good time. So that's the kind of things you want to be looking at. I love this response from Butler. Is it just me, or does Butler have the biggest girls in America? And then we got this image, probably because they drink muscle milk. A great response there from Butler, having a good time engaging with a student. This is a GIF that you can't see, but just a little, the kid kind of drumming his hands, waiting for everyone to come back. That's great. You see a lot of these, and these tend to get really good engagement. It's just a reminder that you're real people who want the real people to come and come back, because the students are a big part of your school. Obviously, they're the heart of it. And then thinking on their feet, fun interaction here from Florida with Jesse Palmer. throwing in this meme in here, which is fantastic. So thinking on their feet, thinking quickly, throwing up that kind of stuff is really fun and engaging. From my all-time favorite film of all time, so I can just start quoting right now, What About Bob? Baby steps. So just word of advice and thought about as you try to incorporate more humor and personality. Don't just, if it's not something that you do on a regular basis, you don't feel like your school's personality is very well shown, don't just flip the switch all at once and just all of a sudden everything is gifs and everything is jokes, and you'll just totally get whiplash from that. Just take your time, test your messaging with current students, especially because they're probably going to know whether you're funny or it's dad joke. Test your messaging, try it on a few different networks before you kind of spread out more, and find that staff member that you know has that feel for what's funny, and really empower them and let them go free, and you'll see some awesome results. It's cool. Just keep an eye on things that are trending. So obviously, the most recent, he's not most interesting man in the world anymore. He's been replaced. But keep an eye on what's trending and what's happening, so that way you can really hop on those things and create something cool that will get you on that wave. And start close to home. So I went back to Evangel here because I love this image. When the professor's about to change the PowerPoint, you're not finished taking notes. They probably have some tradition here with Friday Funnies and something that they saw, which is fantastic. Start close to home with dorm life and just college problems and exams and social life, all that kind of stuff. Start close to home because you've got those inside jokes that your students are going to know. Start close to home so they know kind of what you're talking about. And then with this section, think about the medium that you're trying to be funny on. So there's a lot of social networks on there, and they come and go, as we found out today with Vine, that's going away. There are networks where it's better to be funny on, and others you probably shouldn't be. Just know your medium. Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Tumblr are probably better places to be funny. LinkedIn, probably not so much, and obviously things like press releases and things like that. Pay attention to who you're talking to, who's listening, and know your medium, and that'll really help. All right, so sorry I have to keep talking here, but I'm going to go into this next section, which is our last section, and it's about small schools that have big engagement, because you might be sitting there thinking, okay, cool, good for all the big schools. Congrats to them. Of course they have big engagement. They have massive alumni, all the groups and all kinds of stuff. Good for them, but what about me? I've got a small school. Now, I want to show you just one example and some numbers from different schools to show you that you don't have to be big to get big engagement. So these are 3 schools that I had tuned in on specifically, and I'll tell you what these numbers mean. The University of Portland came in number 17 overall in this engagement report that we built. So over 300 Division I schools across the country, they came in number 17, and that's their enrollment, about 4,000. And across the Presbyterian, which is a school here in South Carolina, they came in number 35 overall, and they really only have about 1,000 undergrads. And then St. Mary's College of California came in number 39 overall, and they've got about 4,250 in enrollment. I'm going to go into St. Mary's here and just look at some of the things I think that are part of that. So here's some of their numbers. They got 18,000 plus Facebook likes, 5,000+ on Twitter, 4,700 on Instagram, and really seeing as a trend common that Instagram is your top performer. That's where a lot of your students are interacting with you, is Instagram. So tuning in on making those feeds engaging and interesting and beautiful will really help. But an interesting thing with St. Mary's that I saw as I was looking at their site and at their social profiles and how they engage with students was the fact that social is part of obviously of a big content strategy. This is from their homepage. Go check out their site. It's beautiful, and it is so prospective student focused, which if you want to hit those enrollment goals, it seems like that is a common correlation, right? A site that is very focused on the prospective student's journey. A great line here, a solid call to action about beginning the transformation. There's more I could show you, but that was one thing that I was noticing. A solid social strategy is part of that whole overall content strategy. So it's a beautiful thing. And then this was fantastic. So this is from their admissions site, undergrad admissions site, and it's all these examples of the use of this hashtag. Now it is hashtag OMGSMC, St. Mary's College, and they're a Catholic school. So, you know, it's interesting to me. That's a little bit risky, right? Imagine bringing that up in the board meeting. Okay, I think this is what we should use. But the engagement was crazy. It was through the roof, and there were tons of posts like this, and people really latch on to these type of things. So look into some of those opportunities that might be a little bit risky, but you will see some pretty awesome engagement and connection. It just brings it to the point that your most powerful tool, obviously, for engagement is this group of fans. And the more that you're engaging with them and the more that you are connecting with them through all these different ways, the more they're going to make your job easier, right? You know this. They help your content take off, and they help your social channels take off. So that's just some examples of smaller schools with big engagement, because you don't have to be a big major player in order to have great engagement. You'll see some other examples if you take a look at the white paper. There's small schools that just did a great job of being authentic and real, and it's great to see. So I am going to hand it back to Seth to wrap us up.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeremiah. That's all really good context. I think doesn't matter where you are, large or small, you can apply a bunch of what we've talked about today and see improvements in your social media, particularly in the engagement that you're getting with your community. So could you, let's do this last slide here. So the first thing I always coach people on when they start asking, how can I start applying some of these techniques? How can I start using data to get better at social media? And the number one thing I always tell people is you've got to prioritize. You don't have time to do all these things. You can't be like squirrel and go from one thing to the next. You need to have a plan. Once a quarter or so, it's a really good idea to step back, take stock of where you are, and figure out what you're going to prioritize improving. If it's using humor, great, do that. Talk about the one channel where you're going to start, or the two channels where you're going to start. Talk about the kinds of situations where you're going to use humor, and then do it for a quarter, and step back again and measure and see if that was a worthwhile exercise or not. Maybe keep doing it and move on to something else. But these are general life goals, life lessons, but let's do them. 2, you want to take advantage of your calendar, your academic calendar, your holidays calendar, your athletic calendar, any kinds of special events or days that are happening on your campus that are going to cause dissemination of information to your current students. Great. Cause people who are alumni to remember and reflect on their times doing those same events, whether it was 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. My parents, the grandparents are on Facebook now. They went to your school a long time ago. Given that you live in a place that actually has old schools, not like Washington here. And then the last thing I think that I would coach is to know your platforms. And really the job there is, as Jeremiah indicated, follow your best practices. If you're on Twitter, like there is a way to actually get the images to embed. Don't put links to images, put the images. The image sizes on every platform are different. If you don't put the right size image or the right aspect ratio on the right platform, it's going to get cropped and you're going to get black bars. You're going to get half your image, or your text is going to be, and it's going to look like you don't know what you're doing. And people just generally in life don't react well to people who look like they don't know what they're doing. So could you go to the last slide there, Jeremiah? And as we mentioned, a lot of this learning but even more is covered in the higher ed social media engagement report that we put out a couple of months ago. All of the analysis about these 340 schools is available there, both by channel and in aggregate, as well as a number of other case studies that we didn't even talk about today about some of the other activities that we see that drive social media engagement for the higher ed world, all of you. So check that out, up&up.agency/engage, and we'd love to do some questions if you have them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremiah and Seth. You guys had a lot of really great information for us. I think those are simple things, but we don't often think about all of what that actually means, and how to be human on social, and what's engaging. and we're the ones in the meetings and trying to come up with ideas for content. But I really am excited about what you said about the content isn't for us, it's for them, right? We design our websites, we need to remember that the end user is the one who's going to use it, not us. And so great information there. We will go ahead and jump into taking questions from anybody on the live stream. If we can go ahead, if anybody has any questions, now is the time. Please do post up. And we'll wait for those to roll in there. We're also going to tweet out the link to the white paper, up&up.agency/engage, to download all of the things that they talked about today, plus other case studies that they have. Great information in there, great focus on just really understanding, social media and higher ed. And it's always evolving, right? We just heard today that Vine is going away, and lots and lots of challenges that are happening. So yeah, lots of things to keep up on. We will have, let's see if anybody has any questions, post them up in that comment box, tweet them to us. We have the hashtag SM for higher ed. If you're following along on the back channel, we have a little bit of a delay in the live stream, so we will have anybody who has questions be able to post those up now. Here. So Jeremiah, can you tell us more about what Up&Up does while we're waiting on some questions to roll in?
Yep. Sure, yeah. I switched back, stop screen sharing, so it should be good.
We see you.
Yep. Perfect. Oh no, I'm in my little cave. Perfect. Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about Up&Up. We are a higher ed marketing agency. We've been around for about 16 years now. We've been working really in higher ed, not specifically, but just for 8 years, but really in higher ed for about 8 years. We're right down the road from Clemson, and our CEO is a Clemson grad, and so Clemson kind of really got us into the higher ed world. But we have clients in other spaces, but higher ed is a big part of it. So yeah, we work especially with a lot of the schools in this area, but outside of Clemson, UK, Florida State, Ohio University, Texas A&M, UNC, some others that we worked with, and then we're really trying to continue to spread across the country. Evangel that you saw is out of Missouri, obviously A&M that's out there. But yeah, we work with the whole gamut, everywhere from high-level brand projects. We've done, university-level brands. We work with a lot of colleges and schools, a lot of college and school marketers, all across the board, from web design, development, branding, SEO, SEM, digital, and we're starting to work more and more in social, which is cool because Rival IQ has been a big part of that because it's a great tool. But yeah, that's kind of a little elevator speech about us.
Awesome. So we have a question that comes in. Peter Angela says, what are your thoughts on Instagram stories versus Snapchat stories? Little platform war there.
Yeah.
I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah, go.
As someone who spends more time than I should on both of these things, here's my Instagram story is my favorite, and here's why. I have an existing network on Instagram that is largely the size it is because it's been around longer and I've been participating longer, but also because of that connection with Facebook, the constant recommendation of people to connect with because of that tight Facebook integration that they have. The net result is that I just spend personally more time in Instagram, and I'm seeing more relevant content because the features that help enable network growth are so strong there, much more so than in Snapchat. But I will say that I still watch a lot of Snapchat stories, but they tend to be that, again, because those features aren't nearly as strong in Snapchat. I enjoy them. I like the way that the content flow and the feel of the platform is very similar. But the kinds of people I end up following on Snapchat are people I've sought out explicitly to follow on Snapchat, versus I just opportunistically sort of take advantage of other kinds of content that's coming from my network on Instagram. I think I was very negative about Instagram stories when they came out. I was like, really? Just a copy? But the more I got to use it, I was like, these guys are very smart. So I think both platforms are fantastic. I enjoy watching content on both. I think Snapchat will continue to innovate faster on the filters side, and that's where so many people have so much fun. But in terms of real time, a little bit of mix of video, some of the overlays on Instagram, I see a lot more of that content because I just spend more time there personally. But I'm also a 38-year-old guy. I think if I were a different demographic, might be, if I were a younger demographic, particularly the students, for example, in higher ed, might be a different story.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it seems like there is a broader audience on Instagram versus Snapchat. My coworker and I were just like, we would just stare at our phone and be like, I'm trying to navigate around Snapchat. I'm doing my best. I don't understand. I feel like I'm really old right now. We're getting there, but I think with that broader audience, it just seems like there are more and more people that I know. And for me, it's just so much easier and faster to me to engage with Instagram stories, particularly because we love shiny objects, and I need to like know what that story is. It pops up, I'm like, it's red. Like I have to make them all, I have to see. And so, scrolling through and saying, oh, that's interesting. That was cool. I should watch that one. And the fact that it's so easy to just work your way in and out of those is really cool. We've had a really good time with those in the agency because it's a cool way to present, not just like culture, but, there's all kinds of creative stuff. And especially those big brands that do stories that you can tell they put a ton of effort into. It's really interesting. And obviously anything connected with, Facebook's world domination machine is going to have some clout behind it. So.
This is true. Awesome. So Brian Root wants to ask, what do you think, when do you think is it most appropriate, if ever, to pay for Facebook ads?
Always. I think what I see both in our own business and the clients that we work with, that testing required, certainly a bit of basic knowledge. Go check out some of the great starter classes on Facebook advertising from, say, John Loomer or Ad Espresso. But with the right level of targeting and good testing around both targeting and creative, you can get amazing ROI for your dollar on Facebook, both with boosted posts, which is the appropriate thing sometimes, or just straight up ads. But you need to know it. You need to know what you're doing and what your goals are. You need to test the kinds of conversions you're trying to drive, even if it's the same content, even if you have the same goal. Doing a video as a boosted post versus doing a video as a separate ad, choosing where you're going to show. Are you going to use Audience Network or not? Are you going to use sidebar ads or not? Are you going to use feed? Are you targeting only desktop, only mobile? And understanding the implications of what all of those choices mean, running tests, and then looking at the analytics, which is slightly complicated to do in Facebook's tools. They don't make it totally easy, but education, testing, you will find success. I guarantee it. There is money to be made on Facebook with advertising.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth. So we have two questions that are kind of similar. Claire Stanton and Tammy over on Twitter wanted to ask, how would you suggest to really engage with online students who don't have that same connection to campus, right? They're not physically there. How do we get them to connect virtually?
I think we've worked with some clients that the emphasis for them was to reach that non-traditional. I hesitate to use the word non-traditional just because that's kind of going to be a term soon. But connecting with those online students, I know particularly in the campaign that we worked in, the emphasis was to help them see that they were going to be able to get a very similar experience and learn from those same faculty, even though they weren't there on campus. And that is maybe not as much related to just engaging. If you've already got them if you already got them in your program, but they're not online, I think just continuing to use things that will pull them in, like live events, and if they're connected with you on social, maybe putting out some wording in those tweets and posts that are really for them, like saying, hey, you might not be on campus, but hey, here's a time lapse of what things look like today, or here's a live tour, here's a Facebook Live or something like that for an event that's happening. So you're making that connection. And I saw there's a question about Facebook Live too. I think that tied in as well. As many opportunities as you can to broadcast live, I think will be great, especially if they're not there, because if they're working or they're at home at night, working on their classwork with you, they're probably going to be like any of us, distracted, and every once in a while checking to see what's happening. So if they can, tune into a Facebook Live event, or it's nice how they're recorded and you're easy to see what's happening, they can try to have that connection. So that's a few thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I would jump in and say is that they're a persona. And for example, while it's nice to be able to, for example, show them what's going on at the university, they aren't going to have that same resonance with the physical world of being on campus because they're not on campus. And so they're not going to have the same excitement about seeing this particular place or something funny happening at that library that they walk past every day, because they don't walk past the library every day. And so both being able to show them that sometimes, but also understanding that maybe they're an online student because they have to work an extra job. Maybe they work at nights and they're taking classes, and like they have other particular either opportunities or challenges in their life that you might want to consider when you're thinking about your messaging and positioning. What kinds of things might they find funny, for example, to go back to the humor thing, because they are in this online role where they're doing their work and they're studying and they're listening to lectures after having, worked all day or having done a night shift or whatever their particular situation is. That yes, it's not going to resonate with your day students, but whatever we call the non-online students. I don't even, again, I've been out of school too long. We barely had the internet, I feel like. But thinking about them as a separate persona, figuring out how to target them and get the messaging in them to them that's going to resonate most, I think is, maybe that's just marketing 101, but that's where I'm at, because remember, computer science. So there we go.
That's awesome. So kind of piggybacking on that idea of the live stream, Facebook Live, right? If schools are looking at adding that to their mix, and then what would you suggest for that specifically? Closed captioning. Has anybody done anything with a live stream and closed captioning to make sure that we're hitting access for students?
Interesting.
It's got to be out there. Now so when Facebook Live first started, they've slowly evolved the production capabilities of Facebook Live. Like it started as a mobile only thing. It started as a mobile only thing in mentions, and now everyone can do it. You and I can sit here and do it to our friends and family. And if you haven't done this just personally for your own network, I encourage get some understanding with the technology by doing it for your friends and family. You don't have to take a risk and do it from one of your university handles. You can do it yourself to kind of live and learn. But now that you can do Facebook Live from the desktop, now that Facebook has opened up the API to allow you to multi-stream to Facebook Live and other platforms, to allow you to do multi-camera, there's so many things that you can now do, I think, with Facebook Live and we know that sound off is such a big deal, and that we know that captioning videos on Facebook and all platforms is really important, because some crazy percentage, some majority of videos are being watched without sound. This is why you see everything being captioned. Certainly, I personally haven't watched anything that has closed captioning yet, but I guarantee there's something out there already.
Awesome. Yeah, we're seeing that too with videos that kind of come through your stream. Before you have to tap it for sound, but before then it will put that text there at the bottom. So just playing with the platform and really understanding what you can do with it, I think would be helpful for marketers. Yep. Is there any other questions before we wrap up or here on the YouTube chat screen? And it looks like we've answered just about everything. Wanted to thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. This has been so informative, and for the Higher Ed Social Facebook group, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. For those of us that are following along, do feel free to join our Facebook group, Higher Ed Social. It's the community for folks who do higher ed social media management for a flagship university, maybe for a small department, everything in between. It's a great international community. We're going to project it to hit about 1,700 members today, or at least sometime this week at some point. So we would love to have you join our group. And we do webinars like this all the time, different topics that our members have asked for, community members, awesome people that we meet at conferences, and we can rope them into guest speaking for us. So if you're interested in guest speaking, please do let us know, send me a tweet, or post up in the Facebook group. We'll definitely try to get your questions answered as much as possible. And just a huge thank you. I can't thank you guys enough to Seth and Jeremiah for lending their expertise today. And how can people get in contact with you guys specifically if they have questions or want to work with Up&Up or with Rival? How can people get in touch?
I'm on Twitter at Seth_Bridges. I am infinitely Googleable. I tend to dominate SEO for Seth Bridges, so there's not many of us.
I cannot say the same about Jeremiah Barba because I am a world famous tattoo artist, which is definitely not me. So in case you had any concern about that, yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Jeremiah D Barba, or up&up.agency. We have contact forms on there, but tweet at us would be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. We're going to go ahead and call it off here. For anybody who's watching the live stream later, we'll have links to everything already embedded. So thank you so much. Thanks for spending a Thursday with us. Bye, guys.
Bye.